Hey, hello, if you're new here, my name is Rain. If you're not new here, welcome back. I really appreciate you stopping on by to my little corner of the internet. And it's been a while since I've done a proper sketchbook session where I just kind of sit down and I do random stuff in my sketchbook with no plan or ideas about what I want to do. So that's mostly what today is gonna be. So if you want to draw along with me, I would really appreciate you letting me know down in the comments. And if you have the time, it really means a lot to me if you can watch the video all the way to the end. And I think that's all the YouTubey stuff. So actually getting into the premise of the kind of first sketch that I'm doing start to finish, I really like the way floating people look, right? I like kind of playing with the way people can exist when there are no restraints of gravity. And I also feel like I have a really hard time being loose when actually executing those sketches. So I feel like when you have no gravity to support you, you kind of have the ability to be as kind of limp and relaxed as you can possibly want to be. And I was kind of trying to approach that and feel that out with this sketch. I don't know that I was wholly kind of doing it how I wanted to, because I also wanted to execute kind of the feeling or the sensation of trying to like stabilize and center yourself while floating, right? Because, like, I don't know, what does it feel like when you're floating? Like, where does the pressure seem to be? How much core strength do you need? Do you need any at all? You don't have kind of that support. So I was playing around with it. I do kind of want to do a bigger, comprehensive sketch of a kind of floating character. And so I've been kind of just playing around with these poses in my sketchbook from time to time and kind of trying to figure out how I want to depict the form, so that I have a little bit more of a foundation for when I actually commit to doing a full comprehensive sketch of that kind of setting. I kind of wanted to redo my piece Deterioration and kind of do it with a more relaxed pose or just a better executed pose. I'm not sure. Looking back on that piece, it's one of the few pieces from my chronic illness series, The Death of the Artist, that it never grew on me, right? Like, it never really got to a point with that sketch or that piece in particular where it grew on me and I was able to appreciate it for what it was. It's always just kind of felt too stiff and too forced for me, if that makes sense. I just feel like I never actually really captured the feeling that I wanted to, and I guess you could argue that it kind of benefits the piece in some sense, but I just never ended up liking it. If you can hear my cat sneeze, I'm sorry. I don't know why he's sneezing, but he wanted to. Hey, don't hit your sister. That's not nice. Come here, Fizzgig. My cats can never get along for 2 seconds. But in general, I just kind of feel like the piece just didn't quite hit how I wanted it to, and I want to redo it, or at least do a better version of it at some point. And so I've been kind of playing around with these floaty poses, and I feel like I want at least one of my OCs to be able to levitate, but how am I going to do that and like execute it if I don't practice? Exactly. So additionally, finally, I really, really love the way the body looks when it's kind of curling in on itself. Kind of weird. I do cover it with the elbow, unfortunately, but I very much like how like breast will kind of curve inwards towards the bunching of the stomach when you're curled inwards. All of that's kind of moved downwards. I like the shape of it. I like the way it looks. And then putting the thigh in there. I like the form that's executed through kind of the curling of the body a little bit. And I just really like sketching it out. Just that tummy bit. I kind of like a little bit of like squish there. And I feel like I forget it because I feel like it's something that I add after the fact once I get the basic sketch of the body down. and I don't get to really appreciate or kind of execute the body how I would necessarily like want it to be executed. And I think that also impacts or damages the capacity of realism, or at least like realistic depictions of the body. Like, people are so rarely flat, completely flat there, and I just forget it, right? I just completely space it out. So this is something that, I don't know, I've been wanting to work on, and I've been wanting to sketch more frequently, and I just haven't been doing it. So that was kind of the first approach of the day. It was just kind of a general concept, and I went for it. I didn't really think about it. And in retrospect, I don't know how well I executed it. I'll leave that for you guys to decide when it's like finished on screen. But I also kind of just wanted to get into some like other ideas and kind of discussing the sketch on the other side, because I won't have a lot of time to talk about it once I move on to it. But I've just been having a really hard time with my art recently, where it just doesn't feel like it's my art, if that makes sense. I feel like I'm influenced, or I'm trying to do things with my hands that don't fully match how I want my art to look. And I've been kind of conflicted on if I even know my own art style recently. And so in that, I've kind of been trying to sketch without recording it a little bit more to see if it's kind of the methodology and the approach that I've been taking when actually executing the sketch. And so I do have some like sketches, if you do have time to like wait till the end of the video, that I would really appreciate you like discussing in the comments, or letting me know your thoughts and opinions on them, or skip to the end and let me know what you think, because it is something that's been kind of plaguing me recently. And as my viewers, as people who like consume my content, I feel like you guys have been seeing my style enough to be able to answer these kind of lingering questions that I've been having recently about my own actual art, which is weird, but I'd really appreciate it. But I've been trying to sketch more with my phone on the table next to my sketchbook recently, because I have a really hard time with my reference being disconnected from what I'm actually trying to execute. I know you do those exercises in college art courses and stuff of like practicing not looking at the paper when you're drawing, and having that muscle memory, that connection with your hand where you can see it and you can move it accordingly. But it's just never something that I've actually been particularly good at, no matter how hard I practice. Sometimes I get it really good, but most of the time I just have a really hard time understanding what my hand is doing. And I'm not entirely sure if that's because my hands are so shaky and it's easier to keep them stable when I look at them, or if it's because I just am very ill practiced, and it's something I maybe need to work on, but I'm not ready yet. Like, I'm not ready to have my reference so far away from my paper. And so I was thinking maybe it's the fact that I use my phone to record, and so my references are always on my computer, which is at like a different angle, and I can't zoom in the way I'm used to on my phone and kind of get in there how I need to. And so I did that for the pose of the sketch on the left side of the paper, and even now I do feel like I have the anatomy down better than I have been recently, and I'm kind of getting there kind of mentally where I need to be. Okay, like how does the proportion of the body even work out has been something I'm having a hard time with recently, and it's just not been as automatic for me as it has been. And so, usually I assume that means one of two things, and one of those is that I'm getting to a point artistically where I'm perhaps evolving in what I want my art to look like, and I'm not executing it how I want to with my hands because I don't have the skill set there yet. That's one of the handful of kind of mindsets I tend to take when this kind of happens to me. Or perhaps I am just not as connected with my art as I need to be, and I need to do some kind of refreshing exercises and go back to basics even harder than I did earlier this year. And, I feel like I just kind of have art slumps. Like, I feel like my art's only good for half of the year and then it's bad for the other half of the year. And I kind of I cycle through that process. But I just haven't been creating sketches where I feel like I actually did a good job. And so that's something that I really, really want to kind of reconnect with and start practicing better. And so I think that there's going to be a tiny bit of a kind of situation on my channel for a while here where I am just not finishing a lot of the pieces that I make in my sketchbook sessions or fully committing to them, or I'm doing a lot of sketches that could be finished one day but are not quite getting there, because I think that's something that I need to do. I need to take the time to actually sit down and practice sketching again and then reteach myself how to render, because I think it's the sketching process that I'm so stuck in, really, or it's not quite connecting how I need it to, and I'm not entirely sure what I'm doing, right? So maybe I need to spend more time thinking about my sketches before I finish them, or spending more time revising them. I've been doing a lot less thumbnails recently, and thumbnails used to be a big part of the sketching process for me. The conceptualization of ideas into tiny little cubicles was huge for me for a really long time, and I've also just kind of slipped away from that. And so kind of getting back in touch with what I want my art to be and how I want to approach sketching. Gosh, I have so many cats right here right now. Is maybe another step in that process. And so I am very curious on how you guys feel about the more kind of casual and non-committal art process, and just being in my sketchbook with me for some given odd amount of time every week, because I am aware that there is no kind of reward when nothing gets finished, right? For some people. I think for artists who watch me, there's a pleasure and an enjoyment in seeing the sketching process and getting to sit together and just be artists together, to enjoy the overall kind of feeling of having someone to draw with. But for non-artists, it might be a bit of a deterrent, because there is no kind of reward. There is no finished piece at the end. You saw a week of my own personal individual progress as an artist, but you didn't get some pretty picture out of it, perhaps. Maybe yes, maybe not. I don't know, because there is kind of this intrinsic this intrinsic idea that perhaps my sketches could be better and more impressive to people than I think they are, and thus there is a reward to seeing how that process is executed and seeing it completed. And I don't understand that, or because it's not finished to me, it doesn't feel like I am actually completing a task that would be worthy of dedicating your time to. Or perhaps my sketches are just not interesting because I'm not a kind of graphite artist. I don't actually dedicate a lot of my work to the process of sketching something that's fully graphite. I do like to add color here and there, and I don't really enjoy working in messy mediums like graphite quite as much. I don't have the kind of attention span or the disconnect from my art when I'm making it to not smudge everything everywhere, and so I just find that it's just not the best medium for me. But maybe that's all in my head as well. And so I'm not entirely sure what is happening with my art and why I feel the way that I feel. And you guys have become my personal diary. Congratulations. I know it's not fun, but we're here now. So there's certainly that aspect to it as well. And I just kind of am processing those feelings. But I also haven't had a non-art class semester ever, really. The only art class I'm in is typography, and let me tell you, I think watching me just have an emotional breakdown over Adobe Illustrator is not interesting, because my homework is so simple and it looks so bad at the end, but I get full points, and then I'm like, wow, this is ugly and I hate it, and it literally took me 7 hours to get there because it was Adobe InDesign and Illustrator that I was working with, and I just am crying internally. Right now, for typography, I am establishing an entire alphabet out of the primitive shapes that exist. So I'm making an alphabet using only circles, triangles, rectangles, rectangle, square, not an isosceles triangle. Can't think of the triangle shape off the top of my head, even though I'm a math tutor. And circle, and so that's through addition and subtraction and stuff like that. So I've very much established this one really kooky shape by overlaying a triangle with a circle in a weird way and cutting it out, and I've been kind of using that for all my shapes, and it's definitely a really interesting artistic process to kind of go through the process of trying to mentally comprehend, like, what is it that makes a letter, and what does this letter look like. But it's definitely not going to be pretty. It's definitely not something that's, like, interesting to watch, probably. Like, do you want to watch me basically cry over the fact that I cannot figure out how to make the letter U with the 3 shapes that I'm allowed to work with? No. No. I don't fathom people want to, like, just listen to me be like, what the hell is this? Why is this? What? Who? When? And what is the letter U? I'm not excited for the letter V either. They're basically the same. I have no idea how I'm going to distinguish them, but we'll get there. I don't know. Maybe I'll make a short. Maybe I'll make a short of my weird alphabet and, like, my teacher's critiques, and you guys can see what typography looks like, or something like that. If you guys are interested in seeing what I've made for typography so far, definitely let me know. I've made 2 Willwood posters, a Helvetica informational poster, like the font Helvetica, and I made a kind of letter logo for Jekyll and Hyde, The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Dr. Hyde. So I designed, like, a book cover using a letter based on the author's last name, right? So S. By the way, making an S from scratch sucks. There are so many curves and I hated it. But if you're interested in seeing that type of stuff and things like that, I can definitely show you guys, or maybe at the end of the semester I will do an entire video on, like, what I learned in typography, because it is a very interesting class. And to be honest, like a lot of things in art classes, I've developed a deep and intense appreciation for people who design letters. And it feels really stupid to say, but, like, letters are really powerful, and kind of the documentary I had to watch on Helvetica definitely gave me a very interesting and different perspective on, like, the meaning of accessibility in letters, and I don't know, I've come away from this class with a lot of appreciation for other people's work that I never really thought of as an art before. But, like, the art of being able to communicate and create letters that communicate to people, and establishing typographic styles and stuff like that, that was all something that I am deeply, deeply happy to have experienced. Also, I learned that the dot in the letter I is called a tittle, and that alone made the entire course worth it for me. So, there you go. That's what really makes me value a course. So, ultimately, I do feel like I learned a lot from typography, and I do feel like there is a kind of increased appreciation that other people can have for type if they wanted it, and I would be very happy to discuss that. It's kind of a odd thing to, like, offer and ask if you're interested in, but it is what I'm doing in college, it is kind of formative to my degree process, and it's like the last art class I'm going to take before graduating with my bachelor's degree in art. So I don't know. For me, it's a very interesting way to, like, say goodbye to my bachelor's degree, I guess. So I don't know. Let me know. I'm certainly, like, open to the concept of just discussing typography. That was a really long way to ask if you guys want a video about letters. But it's definitely really interesting, and I'd be happy to show you the homework that I've produced from it. It's definitely not, like, my best work, and I definitely don't feel Well, it's odd. I didn't feel proud of it when making it, and it felt subpar and felt like it wasn't like good enough for my work. But when I put into reference that I've only used Illustrator for one other class before, and I really think about the new concepts that I'm learning and the critiques that I'm getting, I am actually really learning a lot, and I'm kind of proud of the work I'm produced in retrospect now that I've thought about the critiques and how they would improve the final product and things like that. So, you know, I am kind of maybe a little bit more proud of it than I perhaps should be. I don't know. Turning to the stuff that's not typography, somebody in a video I posted some months ago, I was going through my first ever sketchbook. You literally didn't even get stepped on. Why are you acting like he just assaulted you? So they asked me, like, did you just not draw clothes? And I was like, yeah, no, I didn't draw clothes in my first ever sketchbook. Like, I almost never dressed anybody. And so I kind of realized while thinking about it, I still don't really dress people properly. I literally default to an oversized chunky turtleneck sweater every time I draw somebody. And I don't know what that says about me. It might be because I only wear chunky turtleneck sweaters, but I definitely wanted to play with like articles of clothing that I don't really wear for the sketch, and kind of maybe think about stylizing clothing a little bit more effectively according to myself. I mean, I do like open chest button-up shirts and chunky sweaters, basically it. And so I don't wear skirts, and so I wanted to play around with how skirts fall. I do draw dresses on people. I don't wear dresses, but I draw them primarily to add frills, and that kind of fixes a lot of room for error. And I used to wear crop tops all the time, but I never wore loose ones that were kind of flowy and weren't kind of, they open up a lot of risk for exposure, and I cannot for the life of me wear tights. So I didn't really put a lot of effort into hatching the tights properly, because this is just my sketchbook, and ultimately it doesn't really matter if my fishnet tights look spot on, and it definitely isn't as fun as you think it would be to hatch tights for no reward. But I definitely wanted to play around with a style of clothing that I wouldn't really wear. So, you know, some ill-drawn fishnet tights is still more than I would usually think to put on people. I think the only piece I've ever drawn fishnet tights on instead of knee socks is my Misa Amani piece that I never finished. It's like, I think I've done almost all of the flat colors for it, and I just have not finished it, which I probably should. And so it was definitely fun playing with some like loose fabric and trying to think about how it would fall on the body, and then also being kind of stylistic and fun with it. And then I also don't get to think about skirts a lot, so I don't think I executed the skirt per se particularly excellently, but it was still very enjoyable to kind of like think about flowy fabrics for once, so it was great. And then I feel like I don't have a lot of diversity in hairstyles, so I wanted to give a bit of a longer cut than I tend to give to women, and some straight across-ish bangs. I don't know how much I committed to the straight across bangs, but I feel like I don't really like drawing straight-ish hair at all. I very much like the wave and the chunky kind of fun that you can get with more just wavy hair, really. I don't feel like I actually commit to straight hair particularly often, and I love the way it looks on other people. The kind of straight bob, right? That, or an A-line bob, where it's just straight, sleek, dark hair with the strands that come in front and are a little bit longer in front of the ear, and then like the straight across bangs. I think it looks really, really lovely on a lot of people, and I just don't draw it because I have to go collect references for it. I have short, wavy hair, and so it's easy for me to collect references and mess up my hair enough where it like makes sense to me and I can execute it. And I've had wavy hair at so many different lengths as I slowly cut all my hair off when I was younger that I have some form of reference somewhere on my phone for most hair lengths for my hair type, and so I just feel like I don't have to like do any work, which makes me a lazy artist, and I don't want to be a lazy artist. I want to explore diversity in kind of styles and kind of approaches to things, and so I really need to actually like dedicate time to practicing it. I used to practice hair all the time when I was in my first ever sketchbooks. I was like, oh no, I need to figure out how hair works, and so I put a lot of time into it when I was younger, and I was excited to learn, and now I've kind of fallen into a routine and it's made me lazy, and so I'm like, okay, nope, I need to work on this again, because I haven't done it in so long. It's not like in line with my actual art style, and so there's that. And then I don't feel my hair is pretty voluminous, but it's not like, it doesn't like stand particularly far from my face. I don't know if that makes sense. Like it's thick and it's voluminous, but my hair goes up, not sideways. So I feel like it's like really a lot of curly hair on top of my head, but not necessarily to the sides where my face is. So I do kind of play with that a little bit later, trying to figure out just how far from the face hair can get before it's like, this looks wrong or goofy or funky. So I do really want to work on that, and I think I'm going to probably do a lot of that digitally, just so that I can like draw one head and reproduce it 30 times and apply different hairstyles to it. But I'm not sure. If you guys have recommendations on how you guys practice drawing hair and like exploring different hairstyles, I'd love to know, because it's definitely something that I'm not particularly equipped with. I don't know. I just don't feel like I think about it a lot, so I never really like go far with it. And then I've kind of also noticed that I've been having a really hard time like making the bottom of the face long enough. I feel like that's so stupid to say, but like I feel like I've been drawing like bigger and bigger noses recently, and then not leaving enough room on the face for the mouth a lot of the time. And I'm not entirely sure when and where that happened artistically for me. Like, when did I start making faces like shorter, or the upper two features so much longer that it's just kind of made my faces look chinless? But I mean, it's fine. Of quite a few people I've met and used as references, and I really like the content of have very small chins, so it's not like it's impossible. I'm just like, I need to get better at drawing chins again. I feel like I used to tend to draw chins like almost too large. Like I leave so much space down there for kind of stylistic options, and I just it's all evaporated. It's all gone. And I don't know really what to do about that. So I don't know. Maybe it's kind of just been the personal haze I've been in artistically, or maybe I am going through a stylistic development. No one's ever going to have chins again. And it's just all going to be lips from now on. Who knows? We'll see where I go in life. But I'm definitely having a lot of fun with it. I'm having a lot of fun being frustrated with my art, if that makes sense. You know, there's a enjoyment that I personally get from being frustrated or confused about my own art, and then having to figure out what exactly is bothering me. And I don't know. I don't see that really applies a lot of the time with other subjects like science and math. It's like, I'm wrong. Why am I wrong? Tends to be a lot more frustrating than in art, where I'm like, this looks wrong. What did I do? How do I fix it? I don't know. Creative problem solving in art is just a lot more pleasurable for me than any other subject. And so I am having a good time creating art where I'm confused and dissatisfied with the final products, or I feel like something's off and I'm having a hard time placing it. And so at the very least, I do believe that there is something that I'm getting out of this frustration, and so that's okay, I guess. I don't know. Maybe it's not good to be okay with being frustrated. Who knows? Maybe this is why my watch time falls off so quickly into the videos, is because people just know I'm going to rant completely unhinged about stuff that's like philosophical concepts of like art development. But finally actually getting to the piece that I've done particularly recently to the voiceover, and so I have a lot more thoughts about it. I wanted to do something that I'm super unfamiliar with. I wanted to do something that makes me anxious. I'm inexperienced with it. I have no idea how to do it. And so I see people who like sketch in marker and like lay down their flat colors and then layer colors to establish the actual drawing that they're doing. And I mean, it's definitely probably way more effective in paint where it's like opaque and you're completely covering things, but I have really big insecurity with kind of layering colors and kind of committing to a messy sketch. And so I kind of thought that if I really force myself to sketch in marker and commit to the entire piece and just like go for it, I can get better at understanding the silhouette of a piece that I'm trying to do, and I can kind of get better at kind of problem solving permanent mistakes, right? And so I definitely do feel like this actually did do wonders for getting better at fixing permanent mistakes and accepting like horribly colored outside of the lines, because it is hard to get a sketch completely perfect with a brush tip marker, right? Like it's chunky. And so, I don't know, it was definitely a really, really interesting kind of self-experiment, and I do feel like I actually, like, learned a lot artistically going through the process of doing something that's super unfamiliar to me and kind of completely strange. I don't know, I've never really approached drawing by laying down a silhouette like this and being kind of messy like this either. I definitely do like sketches and highlighter, but I go over it in something more defined, and these are kind of like features of a drawing. Like the highlighter is kind of like a feature of the sketch underneath, or I incorporate it, but this is like fully committing to just going with everything and then trying to build off of it in the same medium. I think that there's a distinction between like a highlighter and a pencil that I don't have when I'm trying to really do marker on marker for the most part and then fix it up with pencil. And so it was really, really fun, and it definitely kind of showed me a lot about kind of processing information and chunking out shapes and how to approach kind of layering my colors in a way that's really interesting to me, and like trying to think ahead into the future enough to understand what I need to do now for later to be successful. And I very much am appreciative of this experiment that I did, and I definitely want to do more work of trying to lay features onto blocks of color, because I really, really love watching other people do it. It's just when I do it, I think I'm a failure. And so, right, there's no better way to get good or better at something than to practice and to work it out. And so I need to really sit down and just play with art like this to continuously improve, right? And to learn skills that are good, right? Because I don't really think about the silhouette very often, and I don't really build off of just one flat color. It's something that makes me anxious and confuses me. It benefits me more a lot of the time up until now to compartmentalize the different colors with maybe a different colored line and then fix the line art later so that I can break it down. The methodical process of this color goes here and then working into that one area instead of just lay down color and figure it out is something that I'm just not experienced with. And I think perhaps if I'd have taken painting in college, it would have been something I could do a little bit easier, but I don't know, it was very just interesting and fascinating to kind of challenge me to try and fix the mistakes I was making as I was making them. It's not something where I'm like, oh, if I lay down enough paint pen it'll fix it, because that kind of semi-defeats the purpose. I do bring paint pen in to add colors that I really wanted to start, because I did make those mistakes, and I didn't leave them white when I should have, but I tried to limit it just to kind of highlights that I really just didn't know what I was doing. or maybe I just kind of didn't think the orange would lay quite how I wanted it to. And those are cop-outs. Those are just outright me kind of cheating my way to what I wanted, and I need to get better at it, and I want to practice it more. And so in the actual sketching process, I was kind of debating, like, how do I want to approach the nightgown? How do I want to approach kind of the colors of it as well? Do I want it to be sheer? And if I want it to be sheer, how do I make it sheer while working with markers and stuff like that? In all of the art books I have, I find that figuring out how you want to use the medium that you're working with and how you want a medium to work within your own art style is just something that you need to do yourself at the end of the day. No matter how many times you read or watch other people use the medium that you are desiring or craving to work with, or that you're interested in working with, nothing is going to benefit you quite the same way that just doing it benefits you, right? Like, just make the mistake. You know what I mean? Like, I have an entire book on how to color with Copic markers, and I've read through it. And yet, in all of this time that I've been working in markers for years now, I just still don't quite understand it the way you should from someone who has an entire book and has read a book on how to appropriately lay alcohol markers, right? Because obviously Ohuhu doesn't have an entire book dedicated to what to do with them, how to lay them, how to use them. And I just find that just throwing yourself in there and getting it done and just kind of figuring it all out is just how it needs to go, right? Like, or at least for me, I'm someone who benefits from the process of that failure and benefits from just doing it and doing it wrong more than trying to completely execute a technique according to somebody else's skill set and kind of experienced methodology that they know how to do, right? And so with that, I kind of find that this was a very fun experimental piece to teach myself what I even know about markers, because I don't think this way and I'm not used to working this way, and so it forced me to comprehend what do I actually know and how do I apply what I know to achieve what I want to or need to achieve, right? And so with that, I genuinely found that it was a very, very interesting experience, right? Because I don't usually think like this, and I kind of just depend on guidelines to compartmentalize thought. You know, I don't just lay down the skin color usually like this and leave the eyes to the end, and I don't really think about how do you lay eyes over a color and stuff like that, and I don't think, like, how do you apply facial features to the skin this way? How do you approach rendering the skin around it when you don't have those guidelines set in stone there? And so I had to think about it as I was going, and if I really, really wanted to have challenged myself, which I didn't, I kind of gave up partway through, which is about where we are. I ultimately should have heard all of the kind of facial features, like the blush and maybe any contouring I wanted to do before laying down the facial features, and then made the facial features match the kind of marker lay down that I did. I didn't. I really should have, and I will probably try and do that with just a face one of these days, so I could take what I know about where should these colors theoretically be on the face, and then how do I actually achieve putting the facial features around it. But we'll see. It might take me a long time to figure that out in terms of the kind of facial features and the structure of everything. Ultimately, a really wonderful challenge for myself, and kind of accepting my mistakes and then not completely eradicating them the best I could. And so if you do draw in a process similar to this, I would be deeply interested in knowing how you like to approach it, or other artists you follow or enjoy the work of that work kind of similarly to this, where they kind of just, for me this feels like working backwards, but I don't think it would be actually like working backwards, you know what I mean? but I would be really interested in seeing how other people execute this process and how they compartmentalize their information, because I think that we tend to all just approach art in different ways, and our brain kind of processes the information in certain ways, and I just don't process this way, and it's something I would like to learn how to do and like figure out how to execute. And it's also something that I think would just be deeply interesting to understand how other people process information, right? Like, I can't fathom, like, it, like, personally, it's hard for me to understand, like, how does your brain process information this way, and then, like, what are the logical steps that you're taking as an individual to approach these steps, you know, because we all have our own process and our own way of thinking about art and executing art and all of that. And it's something that I'm just interested in. I very much enjoy discussions of the psychology of art, and it's something that I very much would like to know more about and to be able to understand just more thoroughly than I do. One thing that I've always wanted to find a book on, but I haven't been able to, is the psychology of color. I feel like in so many of my art classes, teachers will bring up the psychology of color, like yellow makes us intrinsically more happy than other colors will, and we associate colors with certain emotions and certain feelings, and what I want to know is why. Why do we like actually associate these things this way? Where does it originate? Where does the first instance of yellow being associated with and likened to a happy color like actually occur historically, and like how does that work, and how are these associations made, and is it really just the sun is kind of yellowish if you stare up in the sky, even though it looks more white to me? Perhaps that's my eye condition. No, I say that like it's a bad condition, like a scary thing. I have an astigmatism, that's all. Not that they're fun, but you know, my eyes are fine. I just need glasses, right? So but to me it looks more white. Maybe it does look yellow to people whose eyeballs can look up there and not die instantaneously. Like, my eyes just burn if I look even relatively close to the sun. So I don't know, but it doesn't look yellow to me. So where did that association come from? Why is it not white? Like purity and those kind of illusions, the sun is a form of purity or something like that. Why do we make the associations that we make? Is blue just a color for sadness because it's kind of cool? Is that it? Is that all there is to it? Why does that not apply to other cool colors? Why do we choose blue? Where did the kind of first instance of saying, oh wow, you look like you're feeling blue come from? Why is it not purple? Like, purple can be very dark, and kind of the what about warm blues and stuff like that. And what is the blue that inspired the idea or the association of the concept of feeling blue? Like, which blue was the blue that led to this? Am I making sense? I don't think I am. It's just all of the ramblings of somebody who doesn't understand. But I understand color theory well enough. But what I want to know is, like, how do we, like, get to these points? You know what I mean? How did we first conceptualize color theory? Like, when was the first conceptualization of color theory? Where exactly in the kind of, like, process did somebody really sit down and be like, this color is across from this on the color wheel? Because you're not just, like, we didn't just come into existence knowing color theory, you know what I mean? We had to, like, establish it and, like, comprehend it. And so what, like, is really interesting to me is, like, if color theory wasn't color theory the way it was today, could color theory have been executed differently? Like, theoretically, if we didn't choose blue and orange, like, how did we go through the process of deciding that blue and orange were complementary colors? Like, how did that get discovered, and how was that information initially processed, and could it have been done differently? And do we now associate blue and orange as complementary because they were complementary before? Like, that's how it was decided? Or is there authentically a factual point where we can conceptualize this concept? Does that make sense? I don't think conceptualizing a concept actually makes sense no matter how I say it, but I hope you get what I mean. It's just something that interests me, and I very much kind of want to explore more, and it's always been something I've been wanting to find a book on, but I haven't been able to find one, at least not one that kind of covers the topic the way I want it to be covered, if that makes sense. Like, I want to know the the actual like brain processing behind it, not the kind of like educational component of color theory and kind of the I want to know why in our brains we make the connections that we do, not why we socially agree that these are the things. Like I don't always associate blue with sadness. So what is the psychological component that led to this? I hope I'm making sense. I don't think I am, and I think I've just repeated the same thing like 30 times in increasingly more complicated and not particularly beneficial ways, but I also think that that's kind of how I process information. But it's just something I'm deeply interested in, and I'd love to know more about. And I also wonder how that can like differently inform my own art. If I can find the answer to these questions, can I then contradict and defy these existences and like challenge the notions of the psychological associations of color, or is that just something that can only be done by taking them and then directly kind of creating art with those colors that is disturbing or kind of just evokes the other feeling? Like, can I actually like use this to my benefit to challenge things if I understand the psychology better, or is applying happy colors to the macabre and the depressing and the spooky, is that the only way it can be executed, or can it be done differently if you understand how the brain works? Does that make sense? Am I making sense? I just want to, I don't know, understand. I want to understand. That's all I want. You know what I mean? I definitely don't spend money to go to college because I don't want to understand things, you know what I mean? While that rant was definitely a bit on the more bizarre side, I do really want to thank you guys for sitting through it, or, I don't know, maybe engaging to some capacity with it in your own personal kind of existence. I think that's the funnest part about kind of talking not just about art, is the kind of like way you can continue to conceptualize ideas. And I think conceptualize might just be my favorite word because I keep on saying it. But ultimately, with that aside, I do kind of find that the piece at the end I didn't end up completely in love with. I'm not upset with it. I'm not bothered by it, but I don't know, I definitely could have done better. The leg in the back, I definitely want it to be darker, but I don't really want to mess with it too much more. And the anatomy's kind of funky. I don't know. I don't like it. The hand's kind of cute. I know the thumb is like broken. It looks more like a pinky, but I think it's kind of cute, and I did end up enjoying it a bit more. But ultimately, I do have some other sketches that I want to show you that I mentioned earlier in the video, and so I will be coming to life. You will see me. I will be talking to you into the next clip in real time. So see you there, I suppose. Now, this is like aesthetically speaking much more appropriate for the beginning of a video, not the end of a video. But you know, when does anything ever go normally on my channel, right? So, but yeah. Ooh, bad lighting. Let's see here. So, you know, as I was mentioning earlier in the video, let me point that away so it doesn't flash. As I was mentioning earlier, I've been kind of having this weird feeling with my art recently where I can't tell if my art is my own art style. And so, if you recall, last week I put up my video going over redesigning my original character Loki. And in that, sorry, this was almost in today's video, but I did not. I went through the process of kind of exploring femininity and masculinity and kind of exploring, and I don't think I mentioned it in the video, but none of the sketches I actually produced I was happy with. You know, I have this page that I didn't even show, I don't think, but with this. And so I found that this is the product that I produce, and so ultimately I am deeply curious of kind of the thoughts and opinions and the processing of the concept of my own artistic style, and if this feels right, because to me it looks so close but not quite me, if that makes sense. I don't know, I can't tell what's different for me here, and so it's been something that's been kind of challenging my mind for a minute now. And then additionally, what didn't make it into today's video is kind of this sketch that has also been making me feel conflicted about my own art style. And so ultimately, if you have any thoughts and you can tell me, or if you've figured out from watching my work, if this looks normal to you, I would appreciate it. But this is my OC Loki. So, pretty skirt, masculine physique, gorgeous, love him. But, well, them and her, all of the above. But yeah, if you'd be interested in watching me color this, also let me know, because that is why I sketched it on big paper, because I wanted it to be a finished piece one day. So I suppose I really appreciate you watching all the way to the end of the video, and have a wonderful rest of your day, night, wherever you are, and I hope to see you in the next video. So thank you for sticking through, and bye-bye.